Let me begin by welcoming you to this event. Thank you very much for being with us today in this launch of the Education for Sustainable Development Roadmap designed for 2020-2030 by UNESCO for the region, for the Latin American Caribbean region. I would like to extend a very special welcome to Marie Leves, Minister of Education, Science and Culture of Suriname, the Director of our Regional Science Office of UNESCO, Lydia Brito, also to the representative of the Regional Office for Latin America and the Caribbean of UNICEF, Madame Ruth Custod, to the representatives of the different ministries of education and the different panelists that are with us today, as well as the different people following us today through the different platforms available that are webcasting this event. Science has already shown and proved that if we do not act quickly enough and radically enough to reduce our impact on the planet, the whole humanity will face catastrophic consequences. Prolonged droughts, stronger and longer hurricanes, pandemics, etc. Plastic will attain a higher volume than the natural life in our oceans. The Amazon region will become a dry savanna with consequences on the whole water cycle in the planet. Those are just some of the most visible impacts. A few years ago, these predictions could seem fatalistic and belonging to the science fiction world, but today we are witnessing this reality for ourselves with the big human suffering that it entails. This is why education for sustainable development is so relevant today, because it will make us and the new generations to find new paths and ways to create new relationships with nature. Target 4.7 of the SDG 4 states that this kind of education must guarantee that all students achieve the knowledges, skills, and capabilities that allow them to promote sustainable development and sustainable ways of life. Latin America and the Caribbean is a very diverse region, something that has an impact on the different challenges that their countries have in this respect. However, all the countries share the same task to reach a profound change in the mindset in the face of the context we are living. In this respect, we need to develop knowledges, skills, values, and competencies in our educational systems that allow societies to be empowered to face climate change and to promote sustainable development. In 2019, the Latin American Laboratory to Assess Quality of Education of UNESCO, GAC, made a fourth version of the comparative report RC 2019. This document had the goal of monitoring the quality of education in Latin America and the Caribbean region to guide countries in the decision-making to promote policies in this field. Between 2017 and 2019, in the framework of this study, there was a curricular study to determine the presence of ESD in the documents from 2nd to 6th grade, identifying wide concepts involving principles, values, and skills in the field. The analysis identified the presence of 18 concepts linked to ESD, such as biodiversity, climate change, the projection of future scenarios. But despite, even so, they identified that there's still a long way to go. There is a big gap to work on. And it is important to underscore that here at UNESCO, when we talk about ESD, we have in mind an education that is meant to be transform into action. It's not only about data on climate change. Of course, that is important, but it's not enough. Education has also the role of teaching social and behavioral capabilities and skills that allow people to take action to guarantee the welfare of our planet and our environment for this generation and the new generations. The framework for ESD 2030 aims at the strengthening of policies, teaching, training, holistic approach of educational institutions, the engagement of the youth, and the empowerment of communities in this respect. Today, more than ever, we need an education that has the power to transform, to provide students with values, principles, and skills that will make them capable of fighting these realities, and to create common agendas and collective actions that will make us able to rebuild better after the crisis. This is the invitation we want to extend to each and every one of you today to join our efforts in order to create more fair and inclusive societies, focus in the harmonious relation between humanity and its environment. Thank you very much for your attention. From the Regional Office for Education, we are looking forward to join efforts in this task. Thank you, Madam Claudia Uribe. Let me give the floor to Madam Claudia Brito, Director of UNESCO Montevideo. You have the floor, Madam. Thank you very much, Romina. Good morning, everyone. Madam Minister, distinguished authorities in the field of education, dear colleagues of the United Nations Systems and Family, and my dear Claudia, of course, as well as the whole team of UNESCO Santiago. Thank you for the invitation that you made us for such an important event, the launch of the Education for Sustainable Development Roadmap. My first comment relates to this. Education and science need to work hand in hand if we are to guarantee ESD, quality ESD. This is our first idea. This is what we do from UNESCO. And this is the first time that two regional directors are participating in and chairing, in a way, a single seminar, a webinar in this case, because we believe that we need to join efforts to achieve the goals we have set in this document. Claudia mentioned the different challenges we have in the region, and she also talked about the opportunities we have. And being today with you, it's for me one of those opportunities, because we need to work together, to think together, to keep working on sustainability. And what it is, well, in the end, is the work of societies and individuals to make a better world that is guided by social justice and environmental protection. We are living in an interconnected world, and has been evident through the pandemic. And this entails a very high level of tensions, contradictions, and as well as new knowledge horizons that we need to take into account. And in this respect, we need to to explore alternative scenarios, as Claudia was mentioning, not only on education, but also related to progress and human welfare. And it means to review education and also to rethink education and science. And I would like to delve a little bit into that, what it means, education for sustainable development from the UNESCO perspective. Let me remind you that the first report and the first guidelines coming from UNESCO on this field have 16 years of life. We are talking about 2004. This is when we started talking about education for sustainable development. And it is indeed necessary to develop actions that guarantee that each and every one of us has the capability of taking decisions to change the situations and avoid the dangerous threats for our environment. We need to make a better analysis of the world we live in and also the world we want to live in the future, and together make sure that this world is a better one. This vision of education is important to understand the complexity of the problems and the interconnection of the elements. For example, excessive consumption, environmental degradation, urban spreading, health issues that have been in the forefront recently, the violation of human rights and conflicts. So education for sustainable development means being able to understand the complexity of the world we're living, and this is something we need to do through skills and knowledges. We do have the capability, the ability to change this world, and we need to start by ourselves, by changing ourselves, because it is an individual effort that is going to have an impact as well in terms on the environment and in the world we live in. Of course, all of this is related to science. This is not only about education. And this is why I think we need to start reflecting on a different kind of science, a science for sustainable development maybe as well. And there are some topics that are related to education in this respect. First, science is a global common good, and the access to the productions of knowledge and the benefits derived from it is a basic human right. It's sometimes a forgotten right. It's a right that maybe not so many people know, but it is comprised in the human rights, in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And along with the right of education, of quality education, and the right to health is crucial. Let's think about the structural inequalities we have in our region. For example, when we talk about vaccines. And that is why when we think about education for sustainable development, we need to think about rights, because it's a right that needs to be preserved, that needs to be promoted, and it's a prerequisite to reach our ambitious goals that comprise the SDG agenda. It is something that goes beyond the traditional knowledge frontiers. And we are experiencing this now with this new virus in the scientific community, but the knowledge also has to transform into action. Knowledge for the for the decision making. So there is a need of an interface between science and education, and the institutions, the education institutions, the teachers, and trainers are essential in order to make this interface real, to make it alive, to make this relevant knowledge can really get into the education system and to create, in the end, something that is essential for sustainable development, a scientific culture, a culture where evidence and knowledge guides the decision-making process. And coming back to education, something we work with Santiago is related to the education of science. Claudia mentioned the fourth report, and the truth is that the quality of science education is in our institutions is not so good, actually. Many times there are conflicts of quality between subjects, and we know that this area has many gaps, maybe more than other fields. And in this respect, if we want to create a scientific culture, we need to take into account that scientific education has to be a priority in our educational systems. We also need to think of a scientific education that is relevant, that shows students that there are different solutions, an education that is motivational, that brings answers to the big challenges we are facing in our environment. So it is an education that is really related to the sustainable development, and education in STEM, basic sciences, is actually of the essence. We need also an integrated science, a science that speaks of water, natural resources, health. So it is a science that understands the challenges, the development challenges we face, and those are multidimensional.
When we talk of inequalities, we're not only talking about it from a social point of view, but from the point of view of a territory and its access to technology. And the education for sustainable development means that the different curricula have to be understood in an integrated way and not in a fragmented way. And it implies that the teachers speak to each other from different disciplines, and they have to create spaces, educational spaces, from which starting to think about these challenges and in a certain way motivate everybody, from the students to the society, to their parents, and for people to understand that education has to be seen also from the scientific point of view. And when we're talking about science, we're talking about science of people and for people. And there are many different actors that have to be involved, both to create the scientific process as well as education. And to conclude, I would like to say that another very important point that should be stressed, and it's a great opportunity for us who work on these issues with you today, is the importance of new technologies in our environment, and in particular in education. We know that there was a turning point at which the TICs are going to really be part of our educational system, the ICTs rather. We have to be capable of acting in full awareness. And to do so, we have to think of these technologies in a different way. And maybe the final challenge you could think of is how we are going to ensure that through education for sustainable development, we can develop the digital citizen that will be required for today's world and tomorrow's world. And why do I say a digital citizen? It's because it's a person that understands how it works and how the digital environment works on the basis of the role of technologies in society and their impact on everyday life. And they have to understand their role in constructing knowledge. And they will have to command them to be able to take part of in their community and take part in decision making. And this is the new gap of this century. There's obviously the connectivity gap also, but there's a new one. Many people can access technology, but they don't have the skills yet to become digital citizens, and the digital citizens are required for tomorrow's world. Thank you very much for this opportunity. Thank you very much to both directors for your words, and that explains why this roadmap is increasingly important after the impact of the pandemic of COVID-19. And it shows how UNESCO wants to work on an integral version of sustainable development that puts education at its very center. We would like to greet and welcome all the participants that have joined us in the few last minutes. And I would like to remind you that you have interpretation in Spanish and English. You can choose the language on the button interpretation that's on your left-hand side at the bottom of the screen. And now we're going to move on to the next part of our agenda. And to do so, I would like to present Christian Brago, who is a consultant of education for sustainable development, and who is going to introduce the new ESD for 2030 framework and the roadmap for implementation. Christian was one of the artisans of all these processes, with colleagues from headquarters and other colleagues from the region. And we would like to welcome Mr. Alejandro Greatbreak more specifically. Christian, you have the floor now. Christian is muted, apparently. Can you hear me now? Yes, well, I apologize. The efforts in the world to support sustainable development. They started in the 70s, but they became universal in the Rio Summit, and afterwards in the decade for sustainable development, 2005-2015. This decade was followed by the 5 years of world action on the EDS. And there were 900 key partners, and it covered millions of students and of teachers. The objectives for 2015 is based on target 4.7, that more than any other target refers to the social situation of education, linking it to aspirations of the new agenda for development to transform our societies in consequence. In 2020, we are facing great challenges. Short term, the pandemic, and in a longer term, the climate crate. And that is why Antonio Guterres, the Secretary General of the UN, said, what we think and what we know, what we have to change, what we've learned so far is not enough to be able to face the challenges. We have to start learning to live differently. UNESCO, which is the main educational UN organization, wants to achieve ESD for 2030 towards achieving the SDGs. In 2020-2013, the framework wants to integrate the 17 SDGs and creating capacities for empowering and motivation of young people. And the roadmap that we're presenting today stresses the different points. If we reach the objective, the world will have to make sure that the governments include mainstream ESD in their education policies, frameworks to transform education, that learners can carry out an integral approach, and the educators have to be very well prepared to make sure that we can reach the goals towards a sustainable development. And they have to be, and educators have to be agents for this change. And all people, cities and communities have to be equipped to take measures at a local level through lifelong learning. And now we're going to look into what this framework is. There are key features. First of all, emphasis on education's role for the 17 SDGs. The General Assembly of the UN considers that it's an integral part and a key actor of sustainable development. Education is motivating action towards the SDG. ESD promotes critical and contextualized understanding of SDGs. It motivates action towards the achievement of SDGs, that transformative action. And the second key feature focuses on the big transformation in the next 10 years that are going to be essential to change our destiny. We have to make sure that we carry out transformative action, and the contents of learning and environments have to make sure that there's individual changes, structural changes that are related, and their objective is to transform the causes of the situation we're living today. EDS also responds to opportunities and challenges, and it has to be reinforced by sustainability principles. There's a key feature number 3, which is emphasis on member states' leadership. It has to be focused on the development of the country for 5 main actions involving all the interested parts to achieve and mobilize resources. UNESCO invites all its member states to join this process based on the processes that already exist. And these efforts have to be aligned with the priorities of UNESCO, gender equality, small developing states, for instance, and all of this is shared in Latin America and Caribbean. How can we promote all of this? And how can we manage to follow the leadership of countries in this process? The interested parties have asked for efforts to be continued on the 5 different priority action areas. Priority action area number 1, advancing policy, all the policies of sustainable development. 2, develop transforming teaching, applying whole institution approach to ES. That's where learners learn what they have to, what they live and what they need to live, and develop ESD capacity through pre-service and in-service training. Educators create opportunities for young people to engage them as key actors. And 5, develop community action plan to promote individual and societal transformation. To achieve all of these advances, there have to be partnerships, disciplinary partnerships between the different parties involved. Policies, ministries, and environment ministries, and others related to the objectives of sustainable development and different communities. All the leaders of educational institutions, students, learners, teachers, both in the formal and informal field. And youth is going to be key for innovation, and the communities are going to be the basis for this action. How can we implement these priority areas? The heart of the application will reside in initiatives and local initiatives. I'll give you more details. Furthermore, there have to be representatives between the national initiatives and the other parts. And we will reinforce as well the communication efforts, including the Japan UNESCO Prize that follows the trends both in education and sustainable development. Resources will be mobilized to make sure that the interdisciplinary character of UNESCO is featured as well. And we will have to monitor progress of the ESD per country. The country initiatives on ESD for 2013 call countries to implement the different areas, and the idea is to make sure that there's an open network of activities. How can we design the new strategies and national strategies? We will be giving you information shortly. UNESCO will be helping countries, providing material and equipment to prepare the national strategy for education on sustainable development. To this effect, there is a fund available to accompany you, thanks to the Japanese fund's friendly support. As of April next year, you will be given opportunities to show the national strategies in the conference that will be held in May. After this launching event, there will be a regional workshop. And meanwhile, we would like to thank UNESCO for taking part in this process. We will be very happy to answer any question that you may have on this. So, what is going to continue? As you know, after the event today, there will be another event, and afterwards, each country will prepare a workshop. And once prepared, the countries will prepare their strategies, and there will be the World Conference on UNESCO from 17th to 19th of May in Berlin in Germany. After this conference, there will be a technical regional meeting on the priority action areas. And as of 2023 and every other year, there will be a global meeting of the ESD net. And in 2025, there will be an intermediate workshop, and it will end in 2030. We're always wondering whether people learn something that's really relevant for their life. And they have to learn, and thanks through the ESD, it can promote knowledge and empower people to change themselves and change the society. Thank you very much for your attention. You can see on this slide the contact information, both at the headquarters and in the other in the regions. Thank you very much, Christian Bravo. I would also like to seize this opportunity to thank all of those that are joining us. There are almost 200 participants so far, and we have our colleagues, Jerónima and Carolina. We thank them as well for their support. And we would like you to continue asking your questions both by YouTube and in the chat area of questions and answers that you have on the screen. I would like to thank once again all participants. There are many more people who have joined us. And now that we're going to start with our panels, we would also like to welcome the representatives of ministries of Education and the Minister of Education for Suriname, as well as the representatives of the Ministries of Environment. We know that there are young people who are accompanying other people, people from the private sector, from the civil society, and we would like to thank them all for attending the launching of the roadmap for ESD. And this is the starting point of a very large meeting of all the actors in education that shows how important education is for sustainable development to achieve the goals for 2030. We'll move on to our next panel. That is education for sustainable development and country initiatives. We will give the floor to Jordi Pom from UNEP, and after him, we will give the floor Ruth Cousteau, the regional office representative of UNICEF. We thank them very much, not only for being present today, but for all the support that you've given us to make possible this launch and for the next stages of implementation of the roadmap in the region. And we hope to be working with you and with all the other actors that we mentioned earlier. I would like to give the floor to Jordi Plon, who is a representative of the regional office of UNEP. You have the floor. Hello, good afternoon to all. Good day to all. I hope you can hear me. Yes, we can hear you perfectly well. Thank you very much, Romina. Thank you very much first for the invitation.
So, on behalf of UNEP, a warm welcome to the different participants, representatives of the education ministries and the representatives of UNESCO that are here today with us. First of all, let me underscore the importance of cooperation, the cooperation that is already in place between UNEP, UNESCO, and different other actors in the field of education for sustainable development, as well as the incorporation of sustainable ways of life. We are aligned with Santiago's office to find synergies in the education for sustainable development in the field of climate change. With Ecuador, for example, we are part of the chair of the Bureau of Education for Sustainable Development and the National Agreement for Education in this respect with the Ministry of Education. First of all, let me share with you an initial idea, and let me share with you some initiatives that we hope will help developing this roadmap. But first of all, we are in the middle of a health crisis, and there was before that obviously the climate change crisis, but now with the COVID-19 crisis, the planet has shown or has given its most important warning for us to change paths. There's interlinkages between human health and the protection of ecosystems. Everything is related and connected. And in order to move forward towards the 2030 agenda SDGs, we need to really include in the recovery plans environmental sustainability and social welfare. From UNEP, we believe that in order to create a real recovery, including social welfare and environment, the role of education goes beyond the training and the institutional perspective. It also involves communities in a deeper way. I'd like to share with you some programs, initiatives that are complementary and that I hope we will be able to develop with you. First, in the LAC region, we have the ministerial, the Environment Ministerial Forum, where the different countries of the Latin America and the Caribbean region are represented. In this context, there was an environmental network that was born in the 80s. So we have been working in this context for more than 40 years now. And it is one of the oldest networks on the field. It is an intergovernmental network of directors of the different ministries that aims to develop specialized knowledge, exchange of experiences, peer learning, and environmental practices in the region. Right now, we are working on a tools guide for trainers, teachers, and we are also working with the Alliance of Latin American entities for ESD. It's a very proactive network, and its work is very important to promote the objectives we pursue. For example, through the development of indicators to assess the presence of ESD in higher education. Another initiative we have is the Global Alliance for Education and the Youth. In this respect, we focus on the training and school and teaching institutions to be drivers for ESD. It's what was mentioned before as engaged education. We want to help the cities in the region to reduce their environmental impact through change of behavior, and this in turn will help to protect the natural world and wildlife that we depend on. There's a recent publication launch, a small green book that provides a number of guidelines focusing on what kind of initiatives and pushes help to develop sustainable practices between students and staff in schools related to behaviors. It provides 40 simple steps and measures that students can implement in different contexts. We have 120 universities in the region that have accepted the responsible, sustainable approach, and we would like to invite other institutions and universities in the region to follow their steps. Those were just some examples of different initiatives that we have put in place hand in hand with different bodies and partners, ministries of education, ministries of environment, and we hope that with UNESCO, UNICEF, and the rest of our partners, we will be able to help you develop and deploy this roadmap. Thank you. Thank you very much, Jordi Pons. Now, I'd like to give the floor to Madame Ruth Cousteau, representative of the region of UNICEF. Also, we are very grateful for her to be here because today is the anniversary of the Declaration of the Human Rights of Children. So she has a very busy agenda. So we're very grateful for her to be here today. Thank you very much. A warm welcome from UNICEF. My name is Ruth Custode. I am based in Panama, where I work for UNICEF. And let me thank UNESCO for the launch of this important tool that will be crucial in order to promote education for sustainable development, SDGs, and to guarantee an inclusive quality education in a proper environment. From UNICEF, our education strategy view is based on the idea that every child has to learn abilities, skills, capabilities. So it's based on a better learning for all the children, including those in fragile environments. And sadly, in our region, there are many situations where children are experiencing fragile situations due to climate change that is putting them in danger. A big number of countries are facing humanitarian and natural disasters that last for a long time, many related to the degradation of climate change. This is why for UNICEF, it is important to contribute to educational systems that are resilient and that have a gender perspective that is also sensitive to disabilities. We have to be conscious of the risks posed by climate change and other natural disasters. And in this respect, we need to focus on the challenges that ESD can face. We are focusing in 4 points. First, prioritize children and teenagers in our plans, in the plans to adjust and the response plans to climate change. We work with different governments to promote that children have a crucial role and a central role in these plans. In Bolivia, for example, we supported the summit on climate change that was focusing on rather on the role of the youth, for example, in the field of water resources. Secondly, children and youth had to be recognized as agents for change, because environment is part of their basic human rights, and they can have a very important role promoting healthy ways of life and be acting as examples in their communities. Thirdly, we need to protect children of the impact of climate change and environmental degradation. UNICEF, with the Red Cross and the United Nations Office for Reduction of Risk, is helping to design different initiatives at a global level. One of them is the Safe School initiative. It's a global alliance led by governments that is aimed at achieving a political engagement at a global level, providing for safe schools, educational responses to emergencies, and the preparation for disasters, as well as resiliency. With working with UNESCO, UNICEF, and others, UNICEF is reviewing their approach in this respect to include more specifically and more precisely climate change. On the other hand, pollution has to be taken into account, and we at UNICEF are working to change the way we develop our work and the places where we do it in order to reduce greenhouse emissions and reduce our environmental footprint. The roadmap that is being presented today moves us to work together to develop teachers' skills, to empower and mobilize children, teenagers and young people, and to implement actions at a local level. The COVID-19 crisis, the hurricanes and storms that are affecting the region currently have had a terrible impact and had shown the inequalities that are still very present in our region. But on the other hand, they have underscored that we have now an opportunity of transforming education, creating more resilient, inclusive, and fair societies. We cannot lose everything that we have already achieved, and it's time to act. Thank you. Thank you very much, Madam Ruth Custod. I have the pleasure now to move to the next part of the program that is focused on the national perspectives. First of all, I'd like to give the floor to Mary Levern, Minister of Education from Suriname.
Thank you very much. I hope everybody can hear me clear. I'd like to thank Dr. Claudia Uribe for this invitation, and greetings to the UNESCO family, everybody who's with us at this moment, and also a special greeting to our moderator, Romina Kasman. Let me say that the topic of today is very important in education for sustainable development, and the way we as a region, can make this vision real in countries. That is a beautiful challenge for everyone. We all like to contribute to a more inclusive, just, and peaceful and sustainable world. And to build such a world, we have to design an education system that really think differently and really act differently. In this post-COVID world, in the COVID world, we have learned that the center of learning now is the relationship between the student, the teacher, the parent, the school, the community, and their environment. It's not teacher-centered any longer. And our schools and students are a reflection of ourselves. We want an education that strives for equity, inclusion, and sustainability. We need to reflect upon how we ourselves are making policies and what values we are projecting in our culture and institutions. We as decision makers, we have to think long term and at the same time act short term. When thinking of or proposing policy, let's ask ourselves, how are these measures will affect all and not just some few people in the system? Are we really promoting fairness? What values are we promoting in the system? Are we driven by immediate results and short-term satisfaction rather than a slow, steadier growth? Are we thinking of generations to come, or are we giving in to political pressures all the time? Let me emphasize that no policy will work if life in schools and the experience we offer to our children do not show how to coexist with one another. And this, as you know, is not measured by any test. The best of human qualities has to be learned and demonstrated in schools. We must learn how to find common ground with one another, how to learn to be fair and concerned for the other, how the problem for the common good, how to solve for the common good, our society and our planet. Students do not love or stand for something that they do not know, feel, close to, or have experienced firsthand. Schools and teachers are the bridges between the student, home, and the world. We are the first social laboratory for our children, the place where they should learn that it is okay to ask questions. It's also okay to doubt. It's okay to try things, to explore, to make mistakes, to create, and to put yourself in the shoes of others. We have to transmit that learning is not about being right or wrong, or being intelligent or not, but to be happy, have a meaningful life, a sustainable livelihood, and contribute to the bigger world. To implement the framework proposed by UNESCO certainly helps decision makers focus on what they propose as the big transformation. To just give patches or band-aids to our education system are not enough. We need to give priority to deep structural changes. In Suriname, my country, we have taken the recommendations at heart, and very deliberately, we are changing our curriculum. We are incorporating the sustainable global citizenship values as a cross-cutting theme throughout subjects. We are working with interdisciplinary projects instead of silos and separate areas. We are creating more support for our teachers, especially those in the far-to-reach communities where geographically, language and culture barriers seem insurmountable. We are training our teachers in the use of technology towards digital citizens. We put emphasis on science. We are drastically changing assessment, especially changing assessment and changing the way we evaluate student performance. We are where students are not only measured by grades, but by their potential, progress, and their effort. We want to move from a system that used to filter and mainly work for the best equipped students to a system that offers support to every student that needs it. As UNESCO suggests, to advance our educational policies, transform how and where we learn, build the capacities of our teachers, mobilize our youth, and learn from local responses are certainly good steps for us to move forward toward the outcomes we need to see in 2030, especially for our countries in the region. I would add that we do not only need knowledge and awareness to take these kind of bold actions, but we need to develop ourselves and our youth a sense of possibility, a certainty that they can do it, that they can build a better community with their ideas, their hands, and their will. And if they cannot find examples to follow in their own countries, they can find them in their neighboring countries, their regions, and beyond. In these efforts, our multilateral work and coalitions have become more relevant than ever. I exhort you to share your big or small ideas, your initiatives, your practices, and your experiences with one another, because the long-lasting lessons of our time is that of the African proverb, if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, let's do it together. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your clarity, Madam Levens. And we would like to thank the representatives of other countries, of organizations, government institutions, because they show how important this topic is. And now we're going to give the floor to Mr. Roberto Gonzalez of the National System of Environmental Certification for Educational Establishments, SNCAE, in Chile. Thank you very much. Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be with you. I'm going to refer the experience that we've had linking up the policy of education for sustainable development that we have since 2009 to another program for environmental education, and we've linked both of them up. I am going to share this presentation with you. Here we are, as I was saying. We've been working for several years, and we've been evaluating these programs and putting it in context, giving the great global changes that we've been experiencing, especially the past years, with COVID, for instance, with the social crises. We think that we have to be very careful and take up all the different situations to make sure that we have the right context. In our country, we can talk about sustainability, and within sustainability, environmental education, because there's a legislation that provides for as one of its principles in its Article 3, sustainability. I'm not going to read it. What's important is that you will have this presentation and you'll be able to read it more slowly. There is a possibility that the ministries can demand and guarantee this principle of sustainability, and it has to do with respect and linking it up to territorial and environmental realities. In Article 5, in this law of 2009, there's something on the responsibility of government and the fact that government has to guarantee that this is something that has to be experienced in all the learning processes in our country at a society-wide level. In this legislation, there's also connection with each different level of education, basic education, secondary education, and there's a summary, and it covers all the skills, intellectual skills, knowledge, tools, the capacities, attitudes, because there's a training in values, and this is very important as well. And in future, the citizens have to be responsible citizens, aware of their environment. The sound is very poor, and interpreters are not getting it. There's a permanent process, an interdisciplinary process to train the citizen, and there's training of trainers to ensure harmonious coexistence between the human beings and their environment, because societies have to be harmonious, they have to be well balanced, and there has to be a good relationship, because otherwise they're part of nature and they have to understand this. And social justice is also essential, and the understanding of the realities in the territory, both social and ethnic realities, because otherwise we're having a wrong idea of realities if all of these parameters are not taken into account. And obviously the same could be said for nature. So it's a true task for all educators in different fields in environment, the education, adult education, popular education, education for sustainable development have clear commitments in this field. And the legislation in Chile also demands that there is an environmental education, and therefore the educational life, not only school, but education generally speaking, is part of the productive world. And there is a very important support for that. And obviously the SDGs are another very important basis. And 4.7, also the target 4.7 also has to do with sustainable development, as well as all the others that have to do with quality of life, and zero hunger. And unfortunately, we're in 2020 and we're still talking about zero hunger. But obviously, all of this is related with the environmental issues that we've been working on in the ministry from different perspectives. Furthermore, policy for education for sustainable development as a response as a country to the framework of the decade that was declared by UNESCO is also an interesting instrument, because there's a policy that is a kind of umbrella policy that covers different educational practices, including environmental education, which is precisely what we're doing within the ministry, as well as with working with other ministries and other professionals. Obviously, this challenge has accelerated in the past years because of the changes we're going through. And that is why both the goals as well as the actors, formal education, citizenship, the labor work field, understand sustainability from different points of view. And there are commitments on the part of the government. And what we have to make sure to do is improve the contents. And from the very start, UNESCO had set a number of objectives as far as contents. This is for environmental education. So within this general framework, the strategy of one of our STAR programs, which is the certification, environmental certification of educational establishments, guides the philosophy, because educational establishments have to do diagnosis and understand the reality of their territory and the social environment problems, and educate the children for greater awareness of a sustainable environment because of their effect on citizenship. So these are a few points that I wanted to make. We also have a number of tools that we work with, a library, and what we want to do is build a solidary community with values, with an ethic of intervention that goes way beyond the environment, but education for a sustainable environment with values, skills that have to be acquired. And this is what we've been doing. And what we do is we contribute to make the education a whole. And this gives you an idea of all the material that we make available to everybody. And you start from how you build an educational project from an environmental point of view, as up until work with children on these different issues. So we've also done a repository of educational, of environmental education because in our country, we did a lot of work related to tsunamis, floods, earthquakes, and things that are very present in the educational world. So what we wanted to do is connect education for sustainable development with its goals, its challenges, with the world changes, and make sure that we review the concrete instruments, the programs that also include intersectoral work in their strategies. And we work with the ministry, different ministries, and even for gardeners trainings, and also we do these different modeling to understand the reality of our country. I hope you've taken up what I've explained. Thank you very much. We're extremely happy to hear your presentation. We're going to hear Ms. Carmen Ramonia, teacher in training and intercultural approach. And I would like to ask the Carmen and the following speakers to stick to the 5 minutes that they have been given the floor for. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the invitation. I would like to welcome the ministers, and I would like to make a short presentation, if you will. If you allow me to do so. We can hear you. But we can't see your presentation. Secretariat of Bilingual Education is part of the Ministry of Education, covered by the Ministry of Education. I've been working on education for sustainable development. And in this sense, our work is rolling over 2 stages, developing over 2 stages. First of all, the first 2 levels, and then the secondary studies. What we do in Ecuador is part of the, what we do is connected with the goal number 4. And thanks to this, we've had a very good outreach in the intercultural and bilingual educational areas we work with. And we've been able to reach out to more than 2.6 million children who work in educational and who are in educational units. And we also work with teachers, 161,000 teachers, and there are about 1 billion square meters that are covered by a specific project certified by UNESCO since 2002. And thanks to that, we were able to work along those lines. Here you're going to see some of the methods that we use in the space of inclusive learning. We have tried to improve the curricula on environmental education, and we work with the different educational institutions that have joined us in this work. Here you have a list of them. The good environmental practice have been left aside because we have a national system, but we also have an intercultural bilingual system. And we work with children and adolescents on the basis of a mechanism of sustainability for their specific communities and with their families. After this process that we started out working with this at a very early age, we also work with the community gardens, and we're implementing a number of methodologies. In the case of this project, we're covering more 1.5 million of these gardens. And we also are working with the youth who are about to finish the secondary level. And what we try to do is train them to be able to allow them to work with their community in a sustainable way. Here are the proposals of these community gardens that we have, community fields. In our bilingual system, there are more than 1,700 units, intercultural units, and about 147 children and youth that followed. And out of a whole of 2 million and something students. And we're different stages that allow us to sequence our action and follow up on it. Here's the proposal of implementation that we've made for sustainability. When students are on holiday, they can continue to do their work. They don't have to stop. And during the pandemic, the young people who are working in the technical type of secondary studies, they're also working in these gardens once a week. And therefore, they can continue. There is some follow-up, there's continuity. In the Ministry of Education, we have a plan now that's called PIGE, and gives us progressive feedback. And this is for the technical curriculum, technical secondary curriculum, because we also give a productive education to these students. Here you have an idea of the different methods that we use the largest possible fields, delegate responsibilities, etc. And we also manage crops and production and harvests. We work with Ministry of Education, Ministry of Agriculture, and this is for us to be able to make the best and get the best results.
You can see how many of us we are. We have a whole infrastructure and a methodology in place to work on education approaches. That would be it from me. Thank you very much. We just wanted to share our experience in Ecuador. Thank you, Ecuador, for your presentation and your work. I'll give the floor now to Madam Doctora Amparo Martinez, Director of the Ecology and Climate Change Institute from Mexico. You have the floor, Madam. Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much to UNESCO for the opportunity of being here today in this important forum that is so necessary for countries in the LAC region. We need to learn from each other, and we need to be right now much more connected than before, more than ever. Let me begin by saying that the 21st century, it's obviously going to be marked by climate change and the impact of human activity in the environment. It is now when we are going to reap what we have sown, for better or worse. And in this context, it's very important that the children and teenagers in the LAC region are not left behind. They need to acquire skills and knowledges through ESD to be able to face the current and future challenges. This is why it is so important for us, the launch of the roadmap, that now it's going to be in our hands, in the hands of all of us. This climate crisis is an opportunity, and ESD is actually a cross-cutting issue that is common to the different SDGs. We've mentioned the different storms and hurricanes experiencing in the region at the moment, and the fact is that now we are seeing through facts the need of a structural change that encompasses all the objectives apart from the climate action, in order to create a fair society. SDG 13 is related to SDG 4, quality education, and many others. I will not mention all of them, but basically I would say all of them. The one on energy, cities, equality, ecosystems, etc. In Mexico, we have pushed for actions that contribute to the achievement of the different SDGs, but I would like to focus on the work we have deployed around SDG 13, climate action, and target 13.3 specifically, that is related to the improvement or the enhancement of the institutional and human competencies and skills through education, resilience, and adaptation to climate change, reduction of impacts of climate change, and early warnings. This target is obviously linked deeply with the educational goals. A few months ago, with the help of several partners and through virtual meetings, we were able to gather the different education and environment ministers and responsibles, not ministers, but policymakers of the different states of Mexico. Working with UNICEF, we have developed guides and books for high school teachers on climate change with a human rights approach. Those books are meant to be tools for students and teachers to improve their knowledge on climate change, and disaster risk reduction, etc., in the context of something that UNICEF is promoting so much. I'm referring to the human rights approach. And those books are open. You can have access to them through the UNICEF website, for example. And along with this, there came other actions focused on practices, behaviors. For example, in many high schools, technical high schools in Mexico City and in other states of Mexico, working with the environmental sector, we are developing massive courses online, open, for teachers, to provide them with the tools they need to raise awareness between children, teenagers, and the youth regarding climate change. We launched an audiovisual series that has been broadcasted on the TV during the pandemic. It's called Climate Change is for Us. And this summer, actually, it was being broadcasted on TV, Mexican TV. What we pretend, we are aim is to develop an awareness, a climate awareness, and environmental awareness, promoting some different kind of behaviors that promote resilience and reduce vulnerability. There is a final project. It's an informal education project that I would like to mention. The platform that comes from a cooperation between Mexico and Spain to provide knowledge to the general population and local governments, focusing mainly on youth. It's articulated around two questions: what is affecting us, and what can we do? This platform is destined to Mexico, basically, and it talks about the different problems we face in each Mexican state and what kind of measures can be undertaken. To conclude, I would like to underscore the importance of access to education to create sustainable societies. We have this official site on climate change that provides information on the different bodies, agencies, ministries, etc., that work in a cross-cutting approach according to the general climate change bill. We agree on what Claudia and many others said, the Minister of Suriname as well, on the need to create bridges, to establish bridges with science, for example, and to make this a practice through action. In our general climate change bill, it is included, and also in the Constitution, there's the right to an environmental education that is stated, and we believe it's an important progress. One of the challenges we have now is to be consistent. And I believe this is a priority also in this roadmap. It has to be a consistency between what we learn and what we do. The society has to learn by doing. And finally, related to the creation of communities of learning, I would like to tell you that today we start the activities of a center of educational and cultural center in Mexico. Actually, no, in the Maria's Island. That actually, it's going to be placed in the former prison, and now there's going to be training for different groups coming from the whole country, from Mexico, to really do that, to make them learn by learning, by doing. And this is, we're very proud, and we are very happy to be in this event and to listen to our colleagues. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now we're going to give the floor to Eleanor Taylor-Launch for the Youth Council for Climate Change Jamaica. Eleanor has had trouble connecting. Are you there? We'd like to know whether you're there, Eleanor. We're going to wait a few minutes. And meanwhile, we would like to thank all the participants, since we have a very diverse representation of the education, environment, civil society, government, educators, youth. Thank you very much. I think that Eleanor is not with us. It's unfortunate that the connection wasn't possible, because the role of youth is very important in the framework of education for sustainable development. There have been some questions on presentations, and we're going to share them with you after the event. So please, we appeal to your patience. We will share them. And now I'm going to move on to our colleague, Christian Bravo, so that he can moderate the session of questions and answers. Unfortunately, we're a bit late, so unfortunately, there'll only be time for 2 or 3 questions. Christian, you have the floor. Thank you very much, Romina. Can you hear me? Thank you very much. As Romina said, we would like to thank all of those who are present with us today, as well as the panelists that are with us. We would like to ask the panelists who are still with us to show their videos, to start their videos. Thank you very much. And for the main questions that appear in the chat and should be tackled from your experience, is what is the main role in this context of pandemics, education, schools, and large historical and social movements of the region? Would one of the panelists like to answer this question and make a comment? Please, go ahead, whoever would like to answer. Thank you very much. I would like to say that this question is a question that we're all raising ourselves. I think it's absolutely essential for us to start discussing this. This pandemic and this that has required isolation, and children have been separated from each other, and is showing that they're experiencing this pandemic in a very isolated way because they can't discuss it with their teachers and their friends, schoolmates. Although there is a virtual education system, despite that, children are experiencing this very differently. So we have to start thinking about the equipment we're working on and start thinking about how this pandemic is changing the idea of direct learning communities. And we have to see how we use other tools. This pandemic is a rehearsal for what it's going to happen, that may happen at a regional level or even a world level like this one with climate change, and we still don't know where the strike is going to come from. So we have to see how these learning units are going to work, whether they're going to be done in presence or there's going to be distance learning, and we have to move ahead together. And I think that this UNESCO forum has to tackle this issue more concretely through a specific project. Thank you very much for your experience, Dr. Amparo Martinez. I think that you have raised this issue that for many of us, we're still wondering about how we're going to be able to use technologies, how we're going to change pedagogies, and how to include these events in our teaching. And Carmen from Ecuador, I think, has something to add to this. No, Roberto. Well, it's a key question, I confirm. I think that historically, in crisis situations, what we've attempted to do historically was find some responses that social organizations can come up with. And there's a lot of wisdom, because in these situations in which people are giving opinions and are reflecting on society issues, I think it's the right time to start thinking about the values that actually coincide with this opening up and awakening of society. And maybe we have to we have, and if that's the case, because I think that as we're designing public policies, and we're not necessarily reacting spontaneously, I think we have to reflect, because if there is a social awakening that happens exactly at this time, I think we have to take advantage of it, because we have to think about social responsibility, how you build communities, how can you respect territories, how can you respect the timeline of nature. And in 2021, no sound, no sound. We're not hearing. Awfully sorry, we're not hearing. We have some problems, issues with the sound. We can't hear you. Okay, maybe Carmen can take over, since Roberto has mentioned the integrating the wisdom of indigenous countries in this challenge that we're faced with this new roadmap on education for sustainable development. Carmen, yes, I wanted to mention that there is a participation of the territories. In this sense, intercultural education, bilingual education, for which we're developing a number of projects, is happening in the rural areas. And you can do it at your desk. You can work at your desk, but you have to know the realities. And there have been a number of debates. In Ecuador, for instance, we've discussed on community work, because education has to be a continuum. It shouldn't stop. In Ecuador, not everybody is connected. So that is why we have worked on this. And we even had to go on site. And it's one of the responsibilities of the authorities. We have to be more solidary. We have to understand better and sympathize with what we're experiencing at this point.
Thank you, Carmen. I believe there were many, many topics, interesting topics that have risen. Digital learners, digital tools, new materials, teaching materials. How can we incorporate the indigenous people's perspective in ESD? Many, many issues that are very important in our region and that we will need to take into account. To conclude, I would like to share with you the contact that you can use to get in touch with us, with the UNESCO office, and you can use this contact, this email, to let us know, well, to share your ideas, to let us know if you need some support in this process. We are running out of time. Our interpreters have already working over time, and we will have to conclude. We have to conclude the meeting now, the seminar. Thank you to you all, to the panelists, to the participants, to Romina, the moderator, Mary Windelani as well. Thank you very much. Maybe she wants to share her thoughts with us, Mary Wynn, before concluding. You have the floor.
Solo quería saludar y agradecer el trabajo del equipo de UNESCO Santiago
and to thank UNESCO Santiago team for their work. Thank you to Suriname, Chile, Ecuador, Mexico, Jamaica for their inputs. We really appreciate your participation. And we'd like to underscore the importance of the network interaction between civil society, academia, youth, and community associations, etc. There are three basic points of this strategy: transformative action, structural change needed to tackle and to promote sustainable development. We need to make the better possible use of technology to make our call for sustainable development grow. One of the conclusions I'd like to share with you is that we have to learn to live, and we learn through what we live. Thank you to all of you. We'll see you soon. Thank you, UNESCO headquarters. Thank you to the colleagues in Santiago, and thank you all. Have a great weekend. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Meeting is adjourned. We will give you information on the next date where you will be able to share ideas for the following meeting in Berlin. You can see my email address on the screen. You also have the Education for Sustainable Development area at UNESCO Paris address. You can contact us if you want more information. Thank you for your participation today. Have a great day. Bye.